Good afternoon. My name is Renee Garcia. I'm Chair of Litigation at the City Law Department. Today, the City of Philadelphia announced that it has filed a lawsuit against several firearm vendors that have recklessly and repeatedly engaged in straw purchasing transactions, directly feeding gun traffickers and leading to violence in our communities. 2 vendors in Philadelphia, Frank's Gun Shop and Shooting Range and Delia's Gun Shop, and 1 vendor in Bucks County, Tanner's Sports Center, are named in the lawsuit filed by the City of Philadelphia with co-counsel Everytown Law and the law firm of Kramer Levin. The lawsuit alleges that Frank's, Delia's, and Tanner's have violated federal and state laws by engaging in straw purchasing transactions. In these transactions, a buyer claims to purchase a gun for themselves, but illegally passes the firearm to another person who often is not allowed to legally own a firearm. By allowing this, these stores supply the criminal gun market. These shops know it's illegal to sell to straw buyers. They are routinely trained by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to spot red flags of straw purchasing. And although they know better, we have documented many instances where they sell multiple of the same type of gun to the same person over and over again in all cash transactions. Our research for this case traced over 150 crime guns back to straw purchases at these 3 shops. We believe there are many more straw purchase guns out on the streets. The facts alleged in our lawsuit are clear. Frank's, Delia's, and Tanner's have failed to fulfill their duties as responsible firearm dealers. Their reckless business practices have resulted in the loss of life and many other preventable tragedies. Today, we seek to hold these shops civilly accountable for their negligence and creation of an ongoing public nuisance. We ask the court to stop them from continuing to engage in these transactions, which illegally put guns in the hands of minors, criminals, and other individuals who are not permitted to possess a firearm, and to compensate Philadelphia for the harm created by their illegal actions. The city and the law department remain committed to using every tool to combat gun violence, an epidemic that has taken the lives of so many and impacted countless Philadelphia residents. We are grateful to be joined in this endeavor by our co-counsel, Everytown Law, and the law firm of Kramer Levin, City Council, and our city partners in public health and safety. I would like to now introduce Mayor Jim Kenney. This administration is committed to combating gun violence through every possible avenue, and we are proud to announce this legal action today in accordance with the administration's priority to make Philadelphia a safer place for all city residents.
Thanks, Renee, and good afternoon, everyone. We're convening today to announce another step in the battle against gun violence in our city. In authorizing the law department to file this lawsuit against gun shops in our region that illegally sell guns to straw purchasers, our administration is committed to using every possible legal means to stop the flow of illegal guns into our streets. Let's be clear about what's happening. Straw purchasers buy guns at these gun shops and sell or give them to people who use to kill, wound, and maim our residents. They destroy families, brutalize neighborhoods, and cost taxpayers millions of dollars a year in law enforcement and public safety costs. From 2015 to 2019, more than 1,300 crime guns recovered in Philadelphia were traceable to the 3 defendant businesses. Let me say this again, 1,300 guns that brought chaos to our streets and the lives of our residents were traceable to just 3 gun shops. These gun shop owners turn a blind eye to the consequences of their actions, all for the sake of making money. All they care about is the green. They don't even back the blue, they back the green. As evidence makes clear, they know exactly what they are doing when they sell to straw buyers and choose to ignore it. They are profiting off the mayhem that they help create. And if their conscience and regard for human life will not guide their choices, then we must appeal to the courts to do so and appeal to the very pockets that they put their money in to give it up. So today we are filing this lawsuit to hold them accountable here and now. Our hearts go out to the families of everyone affected by gun violence this year. Lawsuits like this are one important tool we can use to help protect our communities, and I want to thank the law department, their co-counsel, Everytown Law, the Kramer Levin Law Firm, and our partners in City Council, along with Council President Clark. It's time for these defendants to face the consequences of their action, which have caused so much pain and harm to so many. We are committed to taking every possible step to end gun violence in our city, and will continue to do so in all the remaining days we have in this administration. It's just beyond any sense that these people are allowed to do this, or these people do this, and the legislature won't stop them, and the Congress won't stop them, and we have to resort to civil lawsuits in order to get to where they really live, which is their pocketbooks. And it's just terrible. Second Amendment was never written to provide for this nonsense. So, Council President Clark, could you please come up and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon. As mayor, as you just said, here we are again, a place where we should not be. First, I'd like to thank the mayor, his team, all of the individuals in the government. On the executive side, I want to thank the law department, and I want to thank our private partners who have been running the litigation team for getting engaged in something that's creative, something that hopefully will gain some traction as we deal with the court system. But at the end of the day, this is about responsibility, as was said earlier. We talk about responsibility. People in the neighborhood, who's responsible for the guns flowing through our streets? Who's responsible for the mayhem in our streets? Most recently, there's this conversation about the parents, parent responsibility, and I get it. But at the end of the day, you had 3, and I'm sure there are more, establishments that have been given the responsibility and the privilege of selling weapons in the state of Pennsylvania. And they clearly have not met their level of responsibility to making sure that these guns are sold to the right people, that make sure that these guns are not on the streets of the city of Philadelphia creating all of this mayhem. So to the team, I just want to thank you all so much for continuing to fight, continue to make sure that we make a dent in this issue with respect to guns. We all understand if we were able to get the litigation through with the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, that allows us to deal with lost and stolen guns, it would make all of our jobs a lot easier. But until then, I want to again say this is a creative approach. Hopefully we'll get a positive result as a result of this particular litigation. We look forward to being supportive and continuing to support these initiatives. As always, we're asking our colleagues, I guess you can call them, in Washington and in Harrisburg, to please take note, to get a little more aggressive as it relates to this issue. So thank you all very much, Mayor and your team, Commissioner. Thank you so much. Next, I'd like to introduce the Commissioner, my good friend, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We all know that the impact of gun violence deeply and profoundly affects us across the city. Families are torn apart, lives are forever altered, and the sense of security that should be inherent in our neighborhoods is shattered. And this cannot continue. PPD, we're here, and we're proud to stand with our fellow stakeholders to reiterate our commitment to safeguarding the lives of those who live, work, and play in our beautiful city. We're here to protect our neighborhoods, and we're here to bring those who facilitate these illegal activities to justice. Straw purchases represent a disturbing trend that's plagued our society for far too long. These transactions enable dangerous individuals to obtain firearms that they would otherwise be restricted from purchasing. By exploiting loopholes in the system, these bad actors continue to undermine our collective safety and hinder our efforts to mitigate criminal activities. Our officers and law enforcement partners work tirelessly to keep our streets safe, but the availability of straw purchase weapons presents an immense burden on their efforts. It diverts our limited resources, our time, and our staffing away from addressing other pressing issues. These illegal firearms exacerbate our crime rates intensify the challenges faced by our communities, and pose an imminent threat to both the public and to our brave officers. The lawsuit announced today sends a very clear message to those who exploit the system for personal gain and profit at the expense of innocent lives. I am pleased that the administration is exploring all legal means at our disposal to dismantle these channels of illicit firearms distribution and hold accountable those who seek to profit from the misery of others. I often say that the battle against the scourge of gun violence does not rest solely on the shoulders of us, of law enforcement, but it's a collective responsibility that requires the participation and cooperation of every citizen, every community, and every stakeholder. So with that said, as we move forward, please let us remember the faces of those affected by gun violence, the families that are torn apart, and the lives that have been cut short. We owe it to them to forge a safer, stronger, and more resilient Philadelphia. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Outlaw and Council President, for your support. I would now like to introduce Alla Lefkowitz, the Senior Director of Affirmative Litigation at Everytown Law, co-counsel in this lawsuit.
Good afternoon. As Renee said, my name is Alla Lefkowitz. I'm the Senior Director of Affirmative Litigation at Everytown Law, which is the litigation arm of Everytown for Gun Safety. Everytown Law is proud to represent the city of Philadelphia in this important lawsuit against these specific businesses that have repeatedly chosen to turn a blind eye to illegal conduct, thereby endangering all of the residents of Philadelphia. As alleged in today's complaint, these stores have facilitated the flood of illegal firearms in the city by participating in repeated illegal straw purchasing. What is straw purchasing? Straw purchasing is one of the most common ways that firearms are funneled to individuals that have been deemed too dangerous to have them. Knowingly selling firearms to straw purchasers is illegal under both federal and state law. And the gun stores that are named as defendants in this lawsuit promise to follow these laws, and they have not held up their end of the bargain. The important thing to know here is that gun stores that are federally licensed are regularly reminded of and trained on how to spot straw purchasing. These indicators include bulk purchases of firearm, buying the same firearm over and over again, having one individual pick out the firearm and then someone else do the form. But yet, as what we've laid out in this complaint is that these defendants repeatedly sold guns to purchasers even in the face of these obvious indicators. So some of you may be asking yourself, isn't there a federal law that makes it impossible or at least harder and prevents gun companies from being sued? The answer is yes and no. Yes, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, also known as PLACA, prohibits most, but not all, civil lawsuits against the gun industry. And the unfortunate reality is that because of PLACA, there are certain members of the industry that they believe they can act with impunity. But importantly, PLACA does have exceptions. And one of those exceptions allow lawsuits against companies that have knowingly violated federal and state gun laws. And that is exactly what Philadelphia has alleged here. Lawsuits like this are uncommon, but they do exist, and they have been successful. For example, Everytown Law recently represented the city of Kansas City, Missouri, in a similar lawsuit against certain gun companies that had facilitated gun trafficking in that city. And as a result of the lawsuit, one of the defendants agreed to implement a set of policies intended to prevent gun trafficking and straw purchasing. And this includes mandatory training for employees, video recording of all sales that go on in the store, limiting the number of handguns that can be purchased by one person in 1 month. And all of that is being verified by an independent monitor. Another defendant in that lawsuit was ultimately served with a notice of license revocation by the ATF. At the end of the day, I hope this lawsuit serves as a warning to any other gun store that it believes that can profit off of illegal gun sales. PLACA is not going to help you. Turning a blind eye is not going to help you. If you are putting the safety of the public at risk, then at the end of the day, you are going to be held accountable. Thank you.
We're going to open for questions relative to this issue now. and then whatever else comes later. Yeah.
How would you explain to the citizens of Philadelphia that what you're describing here is not criminal, but civil?
Well, I think that the reason that they do what they do is greed. And if they're driven by greed, then the best place to get them is in their pocketbook. They're going to have to hire lawyers, they're going to have to spend money on legal counsel, and they may as well lose. They might lose. It's going to cost them money. They're selling these guns to straw purchasers because they're greedy, and they don't follow the law. So the best way to get them, with every other problem we deal with, is greed. It's like pharmaceutical companies that create these drugs for greed, doctors that prescribe these drugs for greed, and people who sell illegal drugs for greed. Same thing with guns. The manufacturers, the NRA doesn't represent gun owners, they represent gun manufacturers who sell those guns to gun dealers who then sell them to the wrong people. And they're doing that because of greed, so the best way to get them is in their pocketbook.
But if someone is knowingly selling guns to people who are straw purchasers, who can turn around and give them
Yep.
who cannot have them legally, shouldn't that be?
I'm a mayor, I'm not the DA, or I'm not the U.S. attorney, so I mean, we don't prosecute. We law enforce, and we try to keep people safe. When it comes to prosecuting people, it's up to those people who are engaged in prosecution. It's not, I didn't get elected DA. Yeah, I think they should be, you don't want to know what I think they should do to them. But the issue is, I don't have the, other than what we're doing, I don't have the capacity to block them up. Yeah. Because we can't get any relief from the Republicans in the state legislature or Congress. And well, better late than never, I guess. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, why it didn't happen before. We were working on this case for a number of, almost a year, trying to accumulate the information to put together a cogent case, and we're doing it now. Well, we shouldn't have to work around anything when it comes to keeping people safe. I think the responsibility of the legislature, and it's not the people, it's not our state representatives or our state senators. They're on the same page we're on. It's these folks who, in the rest of the state that feel that the Second Amendment means you can buy a bazooka if you want, which is insane. I don't think the framers of the Constitution ever thought the Second Amendment was going to apply to semi-automatic weapons of war. We're doing everything. Every time we pass an ordinance, we try to pass an ordinance, we get overrun by the legislature or by the courts. So we're going to continue at it until we get some relief. We have lots of innovative lawyers who can think up things to go after them about.
And this is the first time, this is the first time that you guys are actually doing this with the local gun shop in the city of Philadelphia. And what was the success rate when you previously did it?
Is this every town or?
The question was about previous lawsuits like this.
Is this the first one you did here in Philadelphia? And then in the other states where you previously done it, what is the success rate?
Sure. This is the first lawsuit like this against straw purchasing in Philadelphia. These brought on behalf of a city. As I mentioned, these lawsuits are fairly uncommon because of the Federal Immunity Act that's out there, PLACA. We have filed a number of at Everytown Law, a number of these recently, one on behalf of the city of Kansas City, in which we were able to get a good result through settlement. And in that case, one of the gun stores surrendered their federal firearms license. Another gun store reformed the way that they do business and submitted to a monitorship. So that was very good. We have another lawsuit on behalf of the city of Chicago that is currently at the very early stages and is currently ongoing. And there is currently a long-running lawsuit on behalf of the city of Gary, Indiana, that I believe was filed in 1999. That is still ongoing. So it's, it's an uncommon tactic because of the obstacles that exist, but it's one that we're, feel very strongly about. And as you'll see in the evidence in this complaint, there are a number of very serious legal violations here that we feel the court should rule in our favor.
Rico, how much is the settlement, can you say, and where's the money going? Sorry.
So we're on day one. The cost of gun violence is enormous. I believe the number is $233 million that's been allocated to gun prevention in fiscal year 2024, and plus the police department has significant funds to combat gun violence. So the injury is enormous. As we get through this litigation, we will work through those numbers. Obviously, the harm is continuing, right? We've traced back 150 guns, but there are many more guns out there. So these are all things we're exploring litigation. And when we do recover money, we'll be working with the administration and city council to determine the best use of those funds. Do we have the statistics on juveniles? We don't have the numbers, but you can follow up afterwards, see if we can get that data. There were 1,300 crime guns recovered between 2015 and 2019 that were traced back to these stores. In our complaint, we found 158 crime guns that were straw purchased that are traced back to these 3 stores. Correct.
And what about, there must be other stores. All 3 stores are in Philadelphia, is that correct?
One is in Bucks County, but the guns are recovered in Philadelphia. So they are bought in Bucks County and brought down to Philadelphia, which is where they harm people. The other 2 are in the Northeast.
Were there other stores that also sold that you traced straw purchase guns from?
So we looked at all available data, and there are a few here and there from other stores, but these 3 is where we saw the pattern in practice. Yep. Yes. Sure. 1,300 crime guns recovered between 2015 and 2019 that are traced back to these 3 stores. In our complaint, we're focused on 158 straw-bought crime guns. If you follow up afterwards, we can get you the precise numbers. There's obviously overlap between that, but there are also straw purchase guns that are outside that 4-year time period. Investing more money.
What's the question?
If this type of violence increase in the city, investing more money in that police department?
Investing more money in the police department.
I'm sorry, your question is, could,
Yeah, if this type of violence increase in the city, investing more money in the police department?
could we reduce violence by investing more money in the police department? I'm always going to say sure, absolutely. But I also believe that, it has to be investment in other areas as well, in addition to services. So we're part of a public safety ecosystem. So we absolutely need resources, we being more police officers, we being technology, equipment, things to incentivize, not just to get people to come to the police department, but to keep them, right? Because we're attriting as well. But then also at the same time, while we're out there enforcing, we need folks to come in, which they're doing to the best possible, to come in and sustain our efforts, because we just don't have the bandwidth to be on every corner all the time. But folks will tell you that, when you supplement with services in addressing the root causes of the issue, That's how we see the decreases that we've been seeing, and we just have to scale it up and do more of it. Yes. I think we've rolled the safety plan out. I mean, we're almost done with the summer, but, you know, I'm happy to talk about again what we've been doing this summer. And quite frankly, I'm glad you asked that, because since we've rolled out our safety plan and talking about our partnerships with those who are providing programming for our young people throughout the city, but then also ensuring that we hunker down on the hotspots in the city that we know have been driving the largest proportion of our crime numbers, we've also seen areas that have turned into pop-up areas for car meets and places where people gather. So we've adapted and shifted our plan to not only increase our visibility in the areas, those 4 core areas that we talked about, but then to also make sure that there's coverage in the areas where people like to gather and congregate the best possible. So it's still in motion. Our summer safety plan is still in motion, and quite frankly, our numbers, I don't like throwing out numbers because people feel, right? But our numbers are decreasing, and they're trending downward in a positive way, and they're far lower than what they were last summer, so we're doing the right thing.
This is a civil lawsuit brought by the city, along with the law firms involved, and it's not an issue of prosecution, it's an issue of civil offense, and that's why we're suing them. So there was no reason for them to be here. Yeah. Yep. Anything else? No, we're not allowed. We're not allowed to do anything. Every time we pass something, the state legislature overrides us, or a court throws it out. So we try, the council tries all the time to pass stuff that makes sense. And because we're in gun country here in Pennsylvania, we get overridden. I mean, we would love to be able to do our own stuff. New York City has its own gun laws. New York State has its own gun laws. New Jersey has its own gun laws. And they don't have the problems that we have, because you and I can drive out on a weekend to a gun show in the county and buy a bag of guns, no questions asked. And that's crazy, crazy.
Yeah, I'm actually not familiar with whatever they have in Montgomery County, but to be clear, it is illegal under state and federal law to conduct a straw purchase. And what we are alleging here is that those illegal acts have created harm in Philadelphia, harm to the city, and we are bringing civil claims for negligence and public nuisance to stop them and to recover damages. No, we don't have a specific number right now. As I said, the harm is enormous, and we'll be working through those figures as we proceed in the litigation.
So you mentioned that, or someone mentioned that there was a lawsuit filed in Gary, Indiana back in 1999 that's still ongoing. So this isn't something that's gonna really, we're not gonna see any results from this. This could go on for years and years, is that correct?
It could. It's a long game strategy, as well as with our ghost guns complaint, but we will be asking the court to give us injunctive relief. And so we will be moving as quickly as we can, because that's incredibly important to stop the supply of crime guns from these stores.
Usually, before someone sues somebody, you've had communications with the party that you're going to sue. Have you heard from the 3 gun shops since you filed a lawsuit, or just before you filed a lawsuit? What's your last communications with them?
No, my department has had no communications with the gun shops.
Anything else? Thank you.